Border Patrol agents have seen a 50% drop in the number of migrants crossing the border since the pandemic-era immigration policy known as Title 42 has expired. And now, under the new program, migrants seeking asylum must use a U.S. government app to seek an appointment for an asylum interview. And besides that, they have to also show an evidence that they have sought asylum in a country they traversed en route to the U.S. border. Now, anyone attempting to cross into the U.S. illegally after being denied entry can face a 5-year entry ban as well and a possible prosecution. The question is, how similar are the new asylum policies in comparison to those put in place by former President Donald Trump during his presidency? And what immigration reforms should be brought forward from the Congress? To discuss all this, we have Charles Foster with us today, who is not only a writer, barrister, and a philosopher, but in the past he has worked with many previous United States presidents. He has specifically worked on immigration reforms with George H.W. Bush, the 41st President of the United States in the 1990s. Thank you so much, Charles, for joining me in my show today. We are going to talk about immigration reforms because you must have heard Marcus today. He said, the Homeland Security Chief, he said there's a 50% decrease suddenly on the border. How's that possible?
Well, first of all, Sophia, it's a pleasure to be on your show, and I'm delighted to talk about this very important issue. That was a surprise because if you listen to all of the rhetoric, particularly coming from the right, the end of Title 42 was going to be a disaster. And it turned out not to be a disaster at all. But we still have the same problem. But it just showed you that Title 42 was not necessarily the end-all solution. Title 42, as has been explained many times, is a section of a health provision that gives the President, not to the Senate, not to the Congress, but to the Director of CDC, the Center for Disease Control, the right to preclude the entry of any individual that is likely to do what? To introduce into the United States a disease. So for those individuals who say they like, they're a party of law and order, they want to follow the law, it really didn't make much sense when the director of the CDC said that we were through the pandemic. There was really no thought that people were introducing a disease. In fact, if that was the case, our southern border is wide open to business and tourism back and forth all day. It ended. It didn't turn out that there was any great disaster. We still have the problem, and we still need to address that problem, however.
Okay, I understand that there is a problem. We need immigration reforms for that, and that's why when I spoke to you on the telephone, you said, yes, that's what you're working on as well, but we will come to that after this question. What are the solutions over here? Like, why there is, from Texas and Florida, there are constantly buses going, and even just recently, it ended. One of the bus went to Vice President's house and Kamala Harris's house. But don't you think that's also giving an incentive to all these migrants so they know like they can come to Texas or Florida, and from there they can be transported in the other states?
Well, yeah, I think it's almost humorous, and that's a symptom of the problem. But that's really a political response. So our own Governor Abbott and Governor DeSantis, for political reasons, they're sort of putting on a show. They're providing air-conditioned transportation from Texas, from Florida to many, great destinations. I've actually been to the Vice President's house, the old Naval Observatory, to downtown Washington, to Martha's Vineyard, a great resort to New York.
Yeah.
I love New York, to Chicago. And some of the same people, by the way, and I'm going to keep this apolitical, are going around saying the border is wide open. So there are many, many contributing factors to why we have this phenomena of large numbers of people surging at our southern border. But one of them clearly is the expectation that, quote, the border is wide open. And I'm sure these cartels that are actually part of the problem there, it's part of their business to encourage this because they're charging, they charge folks. And they're using what these politicians are saying. The border's wide open, and look, they're going to give you a free air-conditioned bus ride, a lot better than what you've been going through. So that's just sort of a political symptom. Having said that, Sophia, there is a certain rationale because our border communities here in Texas, we can sympathize with Laredo, with El Paso, Del Rio, Matamoros. All of those communities El Paso have been flooded with large numbers. So in a way, it's not unfair to distribute them. Now, that has been going on in any event. There are pro bono, nonprofit groups that have been providing transportation. The government has done that. By the way, the same people, when the government did that, the same people on the far right was demonizing the government for doing that. But it's just, that's all symptoms of a very serious problem that has to be addressed. It has to be addressed because for decades I have worked on immigration reform. I helped develop, when I was a senior policy advisor to President George W. Bush, what came to be known as comprehensive immigration reform. We've not had any real immigration reform since 1990.
Wow.
Over 30 years. The last major immigration reform was in '86, and we'll probably never have that again as long as the perception and the reality is that our southern border is out of control.
But okay, so what immigration reforms are we looking at? Like, what is in reality required? Because I know the situation has been so politicized from one side towards another side. We listen to the conservative side and we listen to the liberal side, and you're right, even the non-profits are playing a role in it. So I mean, we're talking about real people over here. We are talking about asylum seeking is a very touchy subject of human life, I feel, because a lot of people feel bad about it, a lot of people feel negative about it. I mean, we are not coming to any terms with, even when I talk to people, I don't get a straight answer,
Okay. To put this, a couple things in perspective. First of all, you have to step back and realize this is a worldwide phenomenon. It's happening in the Middle East, in North Africa. It's happening in Asia. People are moving in large numbers for a better life. It's caused by, some people would say partially it's caused by the environmental changes, poverty, violence, warfare. People are moving in larger numbers. We focus on our southern border with no appreciation that much smaller countries like Colombia, Ecuador have absorbed even larger numbers of populations moving primarily, in their case, from Venezuela. Chile has received large number of Haitians. Sometimes we act like we're, why us? Like we're the only ones. We're actually 800-pound gorilla. We're the biggest economy, the biggest society. We're a nation of immigrants. We should be more respectful, more mature. Yes, asylum is part of our legacy, our DNA. We were founded by people fleeing France and England because of religious persecution. So we have to preserve asylum. But our asylum laws, as enacted in the 1980 Refugee Act, never ever contemplated that we would have large masses of individuals applying simultaneously for asylum. It was written at a time of the Cold War where we were concerned with defectors from the Soviet Union, from communist China, individuals that were fleeing persecution because they had stood up to those governments. We never imagined that there could be 200,000 people applying more or less contemporaneously for asylum. So what you hear particularly on the right, makes no sense. The most elementary examination would tell you that. First of all, they still say build a wall.
Yeah.
How can
Yeah.
it make one little difference? Because these people are surrendering at ports of entry. They're surrendering to Border Patrol officers. They're not climbing over the wall. They're showing up and touching the U.S. soil at ports of entry or between ports of entry and say, I claim asylum. So that would make no difference. Even Title 42 was not an immigration provision. It was sort of a whack-a-mole. You could literally use that to push someone out, and they could come back, push them out. I mean, many of those people would come back 12 times during the same day. An important fact, because if they came back 12 times during the day or 3 times or 2 times, that is regarded as a statistic. So those statistics to some degree have always been inflated because they include people who've made multiple efforts trying to come in. They're detained and they've been pushed back.
But Charles, you see, the question over here is like there is one government, the administration would come in and they would say we have pushed them back, and then there would be another government in place and they would be like we are bringing them in. So it's like a tug of war going on.
Yeah, but no. The other irony that no one got was that actually, I would hear people, again, mostly on the right, and I'll criticize the left too in a moment. They'd say, oh, President Trump was great, Title 42 was great, all those policies were great. Ironically, for a variety of reasons, Title 42 was in place until 10:59 p.m. Thursday. So all that complaint about, if we had just kept for Title 42, it was kept, but we still had those problems. The other thing was remain in Mexico. I heard our good Senator Ted Cruz say, if we'd only kept remain in Mexico. We did for a while. But even if you analyze that, what was remain in Mexico? It was an agreement with Mexico that people applying for asylum would be admitted in an orderly basis. They would still all be admitted. It wouldn't have stopped that at all.
Yeah.
But the Trump administration broke that. They said, remain in Mexico, but they forgot the second part, that was the agreement with Mexico, that we will admit you on an orderly basis to adjudicate your asylum claims.
Okay,
So we have to come up with something different because it's obvious, it's not worked. It's a worldwide phenomenon.
Yeah.
There are many reasons. The primary reason are conditions in the home country. It's not like President Biden invited these people any more than you can blame Governor Abbott for saying the border's wide open.
Yeah. Okay. Let me just take a quick break, Charles. We are going to be right back, and then we are going to talk about the reforms which should be in place, which is very important at the moment according to the situation. Stay tuned.
Upgrade your luxury for just $1 down. Get summer ready in style at Big Star Cadillac. Step up to the new 2023 CT4 Luxury for just $379 a month, or the new 2023 CT5 Luxury for only $499 a month, both for 39 monthlies with just $1 down. Or purchase either and enjoy $750 bonus cash. Gulf Freeway, just 2 minutes south of the Beltway.
Shop smarter when you shop at Big Star. Shop BigStarCadillac.com.
Hey! Okay.
If you love me enough to tolerate my perfect little pets and all their glorious dander, then of course you'll visit nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure I'm in the right car seat. Hey Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry, I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Do clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Do stars visit their friends?
Look!
Welcome back. We went on the break and we are going to talk about the immigration reforms. We have got Charles Foster with us. Charles, before going on the break, we were talking about, because I understand like there are new rules in place, like they have to come in to file for asylum, they have to go on the app, and then people are complaining about even getting an appointment. There are so many glitches. So what are immigration reforms? What type of reforms should be in place, you think?
Okay, Sophia. As I said, I've criticized the right. I'll down criticize the Biden administration, which has tried. Secretary Mayorkas, they've tried, but their one app really on analysis doesn't make a lot of sense. They've also said we'll allow you to apply for asylum exclusively at remote locations, and we're not going to allow you to apply for asylum on our southern border. Upon analysis, none of that really holds up for one simple reason. If you read the black letter law, it says that anyone in the U.S. that touches the soil can apply for asylum. So the Biden administration cannot change that simply by a policy. And furthermore, if we're going to say that certain people from Latin America can apply for asylum in Colombia or other locations, you don't have to be here. Why limit that to the Southern Hemisphere? Why not people seeking asylum from
that's a very valid point you're raising over here, because why can't they do it from anywhere else in the world then?
That's right. And the short answer, we cannot, because we would never politically, we could never just absorb all of these highly deserving people. These people, I don't blame them for coming. They're truly fleeing abject poverty, violence, extreme conditions. But there was once a Gallup survey taken that about half of the world, if given a chance, would come to the United States. So by definition, we have to have limits. And so my proposal, now I'll get to it, is we need, first and foremost, this has to be addressed by Congress. It will always go back to Congress. And it will have to probably start in the House, because the Senate will not consider anything unless they think it can pass the House. The House is the real problem right now in getting anything done on immigration. And it has to start there. And what would that be? It would be what I've advocated, and I'm working with a number of immigration groups, would be a fundamental change in our system, where we would give exclusive jurisdiction to those who make so-called credible fear claims to asylum officers, one. Two, we would have a huge increase. I'm not talking about 10, 20, 30%, by 1,000% of the number of asylum officers. And these, by law, they would be charged with, it would be a non-adversarial proceeding. They would be charged with bringing out all relevant facts. They would be preferences given to those who are bilingual in Spanish, in Urdu, in French, Haitian Creole, the number in the languages of the primary countries that we have folks showing up on our southern border. They would be divided so that they would become in-country experts, and they would have available reports of the latest conditions, so that when someone applied for asylum in a non-adversarial proceeding, that asylum officer would do what I do as a lawyer, present evidence about the conditions in those countries, about the report, and bring out from my client all relevant facts. Now the trade-off would be that no one would be released, that those claims would be adjudicated on the border within days, if not within days, within weeks, so you wouldn't have to worry about separating families. And I would argue that more people would be actually granted asylum, and they would not have what I call a second bite at the apple going before an immigration judge. Now, I have been dealing with putting together a coalition to advocate this, and some say, oh, no, they've got to go before an immigration judge. And I say that that's indefensible, because I've been in many of these hearings. Those are adversarial, where the judge is neutral, but you have on one side the U.S. government, the U.S. the immigration trial attorney. On the other side, the migrant, the alien, 90% of which are unrepresented. They have no capacity to do what
Yeah.
I've described. As a result, there are immigration judges, almost a majority of the immigration judges in Houston have denied 100% of all asylum claims. The
Okay.
good immigration judges have denied around 90%. So why does anyone want to defend a system that really doesn't work? In my solution is let's give the right of asylum so people that technically qualify will have their cases granted, but we'll stop. But right now the problem is people who make the credible fear claims. There's in the end they have a right to appear before an immigration judge, giving a notice to appear, and in some cases those cases are being set. They're so far backlogged, they're being set in the year 2033. The recent cases we've handled were set 5, 6, 7 years ago. But in the interim, people you can't hold them forever, so they're being released, and that is what we call an attractive. Lawyers call it attractive nuisance. People know that they come, they think at least we're going to be able to work here 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. So we have to stop that incentive.
Yeah, I mean, this is, yeah, oh my God, yeah, you're right, because it does take that long. And so, okay, my next question would be like, in all this situation, what you explained just now, like why the Biden administration is just putting the whatever they have put in place instead of immigration reform, which obviously the House has to do, only basically for the southern border, and then somebody to do it in remote areas, so why not everybody can do it? Didn't they think it through and they just put it in place in a hurry? So what kind of a credit goes to the administration for this?
There are many things President Biden has done I like, but on this area I'm a big critic. I think the best justification is they're saying this is all we can do without the approval of Congress. But what I'm trying to do is put together, and I'm going to work, I've already met with both Democrat members of Congress that are on the Judiciary Committee and Republican. I'm hoping that they will jointly, Republican and Democrat alike, will introduce this bill. There will be something the Biden administration can support that will really work. What they've done, I think, is what they consider to be a best they can do short term.
Yeah.
That will give them some leverage.
It's like it sounds like a Band-Aid over a wound, over a oozing wound.
It is a Band-Aid. I think they realize it, but even worse, the ACLU, and I just read the complaint over the weekend, has filed a very powerful suit. I am certain it will be enjoined. So even what they put together, I don't think is going to work. But even if it did work, we'll never know, because it's likely to be before there's a real chance it will be enjoined by federal money.
It will be definitely, because I was reading about it today as well. Okay, but the question over here is like, do you think right now what our nation is going through after different political upheaval, especially the January 6th incident, the Capitol incident, and then we are so divided. We cannot even pass a debt ceiling. We cannot even come to consensus together and do finalizing the debt ceiling issue, which is expiring pretty soon. I mean, we are seriously divided at the moment. You think are any chances that the House would sit together and decide something a lot more forthcoming for the people?
I agree with everything you said. It is, I give a lot of talks on this. It is the worst. I have been involved in immigration reform efforts. I worked on and testified on the 86 Act. I worked on the 1990 Act. I worked in 2000. I worked for George W. Bush. 2008, I worked for President Obama on these issues. The climate has never been worse. So on one hand, it is easy to say, nothing's going to be done. But on the other hand, What I'm trying to bring people together, saying, look, if we don't address this, we'll never do anything for the DACA beneficiaries. We'll never do anything in areas where we really need. And let's draft a piece of legislation that will be hard for both the Democrats and the Republicans to turn down. Republicans will want more. The Democrats, have a certain nostalgia for immigration court hearings. But the argument will be, we've got to do something. And if not, candidly, if Speaker McCarthy, who I happen to know, does not take this up, well, then he'll give the Biden administration the opportunity to shift responsibility, saying, look, we've given the House has something to do that can really, which I think it will really be far more effective than anything else that's been talked about. So I'm hoping that the Republicans will take it up because they will not want to be perceived as not doing anything about this, and that this will have, if this comes about, it's very possible we will have both Republicans and Democrats all of whose districts are on the Texas-Mexican border. And it'd be hard to say that some congressman in Iowa or New Hampshire knows more about this than the Republican and Democratic representatives whose districts are on our U.S.-Mexican border.
Yeah, it's more like a shifting the responsibility from one shoulder to another, and it has been going on because you see, if you really look at it, it happened in the Trump administration as well. Same thing was happened in Obama administration as well before that, and now we are going through the Biden administration. It's the same thing, and now we are already in the swing for the next election campaign. So it's just going to be promises and promises, and nothing is coming out of this issue. And to be really honest, Charles, if you really look at the issues which matters to public, that's like abortion law and all that, we are not coming to consensus. We are just divided, and social media has not helped any situation. And now, forget about social media, we are moving towards AI and other technologies, and it's just people are moving more far from each other than understanding each other, and there is never any understanding anymore. Sensitivities are the highest.
Well, I agree with what you say. It's very, very sad. I lived most of my life in an era where you could. I've always felt that I wanted both political parties to nominate the best person, and I always thought they did. And I supported one, but I always thought if the other one was elected, that's okay. They're good, decent people. But now we have developed such extremes, and there's so much people are living in alternative universe where facts no longer matter. It's very sad.
It is sad.
I do not know what it will take for us to get through this, but this is an unprecedented time in our history.
Thank you so much, Charles, for giving me time today for my show. Thank you for joining me. America is more divided today than it has ever been in the very long time. While the country has experienced deep divisions before, and in fact split in two over slavery, we have always found a way to come back together through a civil war, or a century later, the protest of the 1960s, or even the war in Vietnam. That again seems to be fraying now. For the past decade and more, it's become clear that the politics have been generating only deeper divides, not only over issues, but over culture and characters as well. Vigorous political debates with Republicans and Democrats fighting hard, giving no quarter, challenging each other on issues and on personalities. There are constant battles over government spending, taxes, environment, immigration, abortion laws, foreign policies, and a lot more. Political opponents hammer each other constantly during one election season after another. We need to come out of it and try to find a logical solution and stop playing politics, because some of us also believe that there is something special in our history and in our democratic system that holds Americans together. Thank you for watching my show, Truth Be Told, with me, Sofia Jamal.